I really envy you, because you just stumbled upon an insanely thrilling and satisfying movie. If you finish it and feel it's boring, come back and slap me in the face. A woman who can turn an R-rated film into something artistic and still win a Blue Dragon Award is probably only Kim Min-hee from the movie The Handmaiden. Without exaggeration, every bold film she has starred in has never scored below 7 among general audiences. Many viewers describe her like this: other actresses reveal the surface, but she reveals art. For example, the Korean film Helpless we're talking about today is exactly the milestone where Kim Min-hee transformed from an idle beauty into an award-winning actress. Today, let's take a look at how a deeply unfortunate woman from the bottom of society, in order to escape crushing debt, was forced step by step onto a path of self-destruction and crime. Our female lead is named Seon Young, and the male lead is Mon-ho, and the two are a deeply loving young couple. Now that they've officially registered their marriage, Mon-ho decides to take Seon Young to meet his parents. Since it's their first meeting, Seon Young can't help but feel nervous, worrying along the way whether the gift she bought will be liked by her future mother-in-law.
딱 좋아, 지금 딱 좋아, 걱정하지 마, 딱 좋아.
With Mon-ho's reassurance, Seon Young gradually begins to feel at ease and even smiles again. From this alone, it's clear that Seon Young is a very thoughtful girl, and she takes her relationship with Mon-ho very seriously. Because of the long journey ahead, Mon-ho decides to stop at a rest area to use the restroom, and at the same time buy Seon Young a cup of coffee.
비 맞지 마.
아이, 괜찮아, 피거든.
Seeing how much her husband cares about her, Seon Young feels deeply content inside. Just then, her phone suddenly rings. As the scene shifts, Mon-ho rushes back to the car in pouring rain, only to find that Seon Young has completely disappeared. What confuses Mon-ho even more is that it's raining so heavily outside. Yet Seon Young left without taking an umbrella, which is clearly very unusual. He quickly calls her, but after trying for several hours, no one ever answers. And even after searching the entire rest area, there is no sign of her anywhere. So where did Seon Young go? And who made that phone call to her? With no other choice, Mon-ho rushes to the police station to report the case, explaining everything that happened in detail. Anyone who has watched Korean films knows that the efficiency of the police there can feel almost non-existent. They tell Mon-ho to go home and wait, suggesting that maybe Seon Young will come back in a few days. This leaves Mon-ho completely stunned, and he starts arguing loudly with the officers. But it changes nothing, and he ends up going home frustrated. Not wanting his parents to worry, Mon-ho lies and says that Seon Young isn't feeling well and will visit them in a few days. However, right after hanging up the phone, a wave of unease washes over him, because before leaving that morning, they had clearly tidied up the house. Yet now the place is in complete disarray. Looking at the empty closet, everything points to someone hurriedly packing up and leaving, and that person can only be Seon Young. At that moment, a bank representative suddenly calls Mon-ho.
너 선영 씨하고 같이 있냐? 혹시 무슨 얘기 들은 거 없어?
뭔 얘기?
It turns out that some time ago, Mon-ho and Seon Young had applied for a credit card together, but it was rejected by the bank. The system shows that back in 2007, Seon Young had accumulated massive debt, filed for personal bankruptcy, and had a long record of overdue payments, and the call Seon Young received in the car was made by that same representative. But this alone doesn't seem enough to explain why she would suddenly disappear. So could there be an even deeper secret hidden behind all this? At first, Mon-ho thinks it might be a mistake in the records, but when the documents clearly display the name Seon Young in black and white, he is completely shaken. He can't imagine what kind of life she was living before he met her. Looking at their sweet wedding photos and the memories they shared, Mon-ho swears that he will find Seon Young no matter what. So the next day, he goes to Seon Young's workplace, hoping to learn something from her colleagues, but faced with her sudden disappearance, no one has any idea where she went.
선영이 입사할 때 이력서 같은 거 있으면 좀 보여주세요.
When he examined the resume, what he found shocked him even more. The resume Seon Young submitted when she joined the company is entirely fabricated. Her work history, education, and home address don't exist at all. In other words, Seon Young seems to have suddenly appeared in this world just a few years ago. Mon-ho cannot accept this reality, so he tracks down the representative who handled Seon Young's bankruptcy case in 2007 to uncover the truth behind the debt. From the representative, he learns that Seon Young originally only owed 350,000 won, but by the time she filed for bankruptcy, the debt had soared to 80 million.
콘도 체인에 다니다가 그 서울 영업소로 옮기고 나서 카드 사용 늘어나고 연체금 생기고 그 연체금 현금 서비스로 갚으려고 또 돈 빌리죠. 그 이자 센 현금 서비스는 또 못 갚죠.
As Mon-ho examines the documents she filled out, he begins to notice something strange. because the handwriting on them is completely different from Seon-young's usual writing. At first, the representative thinks he might have mistaken her for someone else, but when the photos of the two are placed side by side, something even more bizarre appears. Although the two women look completely different, all their personal information is exactly the same, even down to the identical ID number, leaving the representative utterly confused, because the person who came to file for bankruptcy back then was not Seon-yeon herself.
처음 보는 얼굴인데요.
예?
With no other options left, Monho has no choice but to go to his cousin, Kim Jong-un, because Kim Jong-un used to be a detective and has strong investigative skills. Maybe he is the only one who can help him find Seon-yeon.
아 얘가 선영이가 아니래. 그 얘가 나랑 결혼할 여잔데 얘가 누군지 모른다고 지금. 그 아무하고도 연락이 안 돼 지금 형.
He was just about to marry the woman he loves. Yet in the end, he doesn't even know what her real name is, let alone where she is now. Such an absurd situation leaves Kim Jong-un completely dumbfounded, and he can barely make sense of what Monho was saying, so he has no choice but to follow Monho to the place where they live. But the moment he steps inside, Kim Jong-un notices that something is off. Although the room is in complete disarray, there isn't a single fingerprint on any of the items, which clearly shows that Seon-yeon's sudden disappearance was planned in advance. If you say she was after money, Seon-yeon never once asked Monho for any gifts. If you say she was trying to scam her way into marriage, she hadn't even gotten the wedding money yet, so there must be some hidden secret behind her sudden disappearance. And it is a secret Monho absolutely cannot know. This bizarre case slowly begins to stir Kim Jong-un's curiosity. A mysterious woman with no friends, no family, and no job. So why did she choose to get close to Monho, and even plan to marry him? So he contacts one of his former colleagues and, through the network system, uncovers all the information on the real Seon-yeon, which is the person the fake Seon-yeon was trying to copy, and we will call her Soo-yeon. Soo-yeon used to live in a poor slum, and according to her landlord, she also disappeared all of a sudden, without even having time to pack up her belongings.
그래요? 아 혹시 여기 드나드는 선영 씨 친구들 중에 이런 사람 본 적 있어요?
Afterward, the landlord looks at Seon-yeon's photo and says he has never seen this person before, nor has he ever seen Soo-yeon with her. However, among the pile of things Soo-yeon left behind, Kim Jong-un finds a treatment card from a cosmetic clinic. From the receptionist, he learns that Soo-yeon's last visit for treatment was around July or August of 2008, and that she had atopic dermatitis. After a series of investigations, along with an analysis of Soo-yeon's personal information, Kim Jong-un arrives at a shocking conclusion. Soo-yeon disappeared in March 2 years earlier, and then 2 months later in May, Seon-yeon moved here and began using Soo-yeon's resume and bank account to continue living as Soo-yeon.
강선영을 의도적으로 사칭해서 살아왔다는 거. 게다가 너랑 결혼까지 하려고 했다는 거. 어쨌든 이건 영원히 강선영으로 살아가려고 했던 거 같거든. 뭐 진짜 강선영이 나타나면 그 여자가 누군지 왜 그랬는지 분명해질 거야.
And Kim Jong-un also brings back one important piece of information. On the very day Seon-yeon disappeared, she withdrew every last bit of money from the account, which clearly means she had no intention of ever coming back. So Kim Jong-un advises Monho to stop looking for her and just tell the truth to his parents instead. But how could Monho possibly give up so easily? After all, the two of them had been deeply in love for more than a year.
나는 왜 걔가 다른 사람 이름으로 살아가려고 하는지 이해가 안 가서 그래 지금.
어떤 여자가 자기 이름으로 살고 너랑 사귀고 심지어 너랑 결혼까지 하려고 했어. 그런데도 진짜 강선영은 1년이 지나도록 어디서 뭘 하고 있는지 나타나질 않아. 이게 우연이겠어?
아 우연이 아닌 뭔데?
Seeing that Monho was still refusing to let go, Kim Jong-un finally lays out the truth. After Soo-yeon's mother died in an apparent accident, Soo-yeon collected a huge insurance payout and then completely vanished, so there is hardly any need to overthink it. Soo-yeon is very likely responsible for a serious crime, but what does that have to do with Seon-yeon? So Monho and Kim Jong-un get into a fierce argument, but unfortunately Monho has no ground to stand on, because he doesn't even know what his own fiancée is really called. So the next day, he goes alone to Soo-yeon's hometown, then holds up Seon-yeon's photo and lies that the two are good friends, before going around asking one person after another whether they have seen this woman. But this is Soo-yeon's hometown after all, so who would recognize someone named Seon-yeon? As a result, after asking around everywhere, he still finds no clue at all, and in the end, he can only stand on the street like a madman, shouting in frustration. As for Kim Jong-un, he naturally does not want to see his brother give up on himself. Even though they had a huge fight, Kim Jong-un is still continuing to investigate Seon-yeon's whereabouts. He discovers that ever since Seon-yeon began impersonating Suyeon, a cosmetics brand starting with the letter C has kept appearing around her, from delivery boxes to beauty products. Everything is from that brand, until one day, a delivery truck from that cosmetics company appears on the street. So Kim Jong-un decides to follow it on a hunch and ends up arriving at the company. While waiting for the manager, Kim Jong-un wanders around the office out of boredom, and unexpectedly, in an employee group photo from 2008, he spots Seon-yeon, and her real name is Cha Jae-seon. To avoid affecting everyone's viewing experience, we will still call her Seon-yeon. She used to work here, and based on what he uncovers that day, along with what he hears from the manager, Seon-yeon stole customer information during her time at the company and then used it to carry out her identity replacement plan. After going through so much trouble, Monho finally learns the real name of the woman he was about to marry. But what hurts Monho even more is that Seon-yeon had actually been married before, and had once built a family of her own, only for it to later fall apart for some reason. However, before Monho can even catch his breath, his stress surges all over again. On December 8, 2008, Seon-yeon had taken 4 days off, and during those exact 4 days, Suyeon's mother died in an apparent accident. So if that is the case, then Suyeon's mother's death was very likely also caused by Seon-yeon. As the truth slowly comes to light, Monho's nerves begin to break down as well, and he cannot believe that the woman who once slept beside him, the woman he loved so deeply, could be someone tied to such terrible acts. But he still refuses to believe Seon-yeon is that kind of person. And then one night, Monho suddenly receives a call from an unknown number, but after he answers, the person on the other end says nothing at all, and in that instant, Monho feels certain that this must be the Seon-yeon he has been desperately searching for. The call goes on like that for 2 full minutes, and after it ends, Monho completely panics, so he quickly tells Kim Jong-un about it. But instead of taking him to look for Seon-yeon, Kim Jong-un goes to find Seon-yeon's ex-husband. From the ex-husband, they learn that Seon-yeon's father once ran a small furniture factory, but when the Korean financial crisis hit, her father fell into despair overnight. In order to keep both the business and the family afloat, he could only borrow from loan sharks everywhere. But as he kept borrowing, the interest kept growing, and in the end, when he could no longer repay it, he abandoned Seon-yeon and her mother and disappeared. After that, the loan sharks went after Seon-yeon's mother, and when Seon-yeon saw her mother again, her mother had already become a cold body. At that time, Seon-yeon was only 15 years old, and with no financial means, she was taken in by a local orphanage. Not long afterward, she met her future ex-husband, and because he felt sorry for what she had been through, he proposed to her, and eventually the two got married. She thought life was finally moving toward happiness, but those loan sharks still had no intention of letting Seon-yeon go, and they kept showing up at her husband's home again and again to demand money, until even the family restaurant could no longer stay in business. Faced with the crushing pressure of repayment, her husband had no way to handle it either, and in the end, after reaching his limit, he gave Seon-yeon some money and divorced her. After that, they heard that Seon-yeon seemed to have gone to her sister's house for shelter, but when Monho and Kim Jong-un arrived there, they learned that back then, Seon-yeon never successfully made it to her sister's home, and was instead taken by loan sharks at the station and forced into illegal work. A year later, Seon-yeon found a chance to escape in secret, and only then did she finally make it to her sister's home. Afraid that the loan sharks would trace her there, the sister gave Seon-yeon some money and told her to go to Seoul and lie low for a while. But the moment Seon-yeon left, her sister never managed to contact her again. 9 months later, her sister received a call from the hospital, saying that Seon-yeon was pregnant with a child whose father was unknown. Because the doctors found that the baby had a congenital heart condition and would not survive for long, they asked her sister to take care of the child. During that period, Seon-yeon's life was completely dark, and she would mutter strange things day and night. Not long after, Seon-yeon disappeared once again. A few months later, she joined a cosmetics company and started working there, where she met Suyeon. Suyeon, just like Seon-yeon, had no family and no friends, and since they were around the same age, the two quickly became close friends. But on the day Suyeon's mother passed away in an apparent accident, Seon-yeon learned that Suyeon would receive a large sum of money. In fact, Seon-yeon had approached her from the very beginning with the intention of taking her place and continuing life under a new identity. Tempted by the huge insurance payout, Suyeon had just received the money and hadn't even had time to repay her debts before she lost her life at Seon-yeon's hands. Afterward, Seon-yeon handled the situation in a concealed way, placed everything into a suitcase, and disposed of it in the river to erase all traces. Later, using Soo-yeon's identity, Seon-yeon met Mon-ho, and the two lived a sweet life together for more than a year. But just as they were about to visit his parents, the system flagged Soo-yeon's bankruptcy record. That phone call made Seon-yeon realize that her identity was about to be exposed, and that all her happiness would disappear. With no other choice, she decided to run, but Seon-yeon did not simply vanish. Instead, she began searching for her next target, preparing to repeat the same plan and continue living under another identity. After learning everything about Seon-yeon, Mon-ho grew more and more depressed each day. Unable to escape the shadow of loving someone tied to such acts, his friend tried to comfort him, telling him to pull himself together, saying that he should actually feel relieved, since all of this happened before the wedding and didn't drag him down with it, and that Seon-yeon might already have taken on a new identity and be with another man now. It was this casual remark that suddenly made Mon-ho realize that something was terribly wrong. At the same time, Kim Jong-un also anticipated this possibility, and immediately started checking through the list of clients Seon-yeon had once accessed, eventually finding someone similar to Soo-yeon, a person with no family or close connections, and Seon-yeon had previously come into contact with this person, recently even running into her again and giving her 2 tickets to a mall performance, inviting her to go together on the weekend. Through surveillance footage, they confirmed that this person was indeed Seon-yeon. Worried that Mon-ho might interfere with the operation if he saw her, Kim Jong-un told him to wait at the pet hospital, saying they would be back soon. Mon-ho sat in the hospital feeling both anxious and restless, afraid that Seon-yeon might harm someone, yet also afraid that she would face a lifetime behind bars. As time slowly passed, the performance was about to end, yet Mon-ho still had no news from Kim Jong-un. Just then, an employee in the shop mentioned looking for a pet carrier.
근데 케이지는 왜?
아, 호두 엄마요. 전에 오더에 고양이 구해준 친구랑 놀러 간대요. 근데 요새 우편물이 하도 없어지고 뜯겨지고 찜찜하다 그래서 제가 호두 재워주기로 했거든요.
우편물이 없어진다고?
네. 전에 보낸 진료 차트 CD도 못 받았다 그랬잖아요.
Hearing this, Mon-ho froze on the spot. This Hana also had no family and no friends, and the only companion in her daily life was that dog. But now a new friend had suddenly appeared, and they were even going out together, which made Mon-ho wonder whether this friend could be Seon-yeon. After learning that Hana had already gone to the station, Mon-ho rushed there without stopping, and he did not even notice Kim Jong-un calling him. Meanwhile, over at the mall, Seon-yeon never showed up for the meeting. When he could not get through by phone, Kim Jong-un had no choice but to call the pet hospital, and the staff told him everything that had happened. After hearing this, Kim Jong-un immediately drove toward the station. At the same time, Mon-ho had already arrived there and saw Hana standing in line to collect her ticket.
어머 원장님 왜 나오셨어요?
이 고양이 구해준 사람 누구예요? 같이 여행 가는 사람.
왜 그러세요? 제 친구인데요. 임정혜라고.
Not knowing how to explain it, Mon-ho could only take out Seon-yeon's photo.
맞아요.
At that moment, Seon-yeon had already arrived at the entrance to the station, and while taking the escalator, she happened to see Hana. She warmly stepped forward to greet her, but Hana ignored her and showed a frightened expression. That instantly made Seon-yeon realize that something was wrong, and she immediately understood that her identity had been exposed. When she reached the second floor by escalator and was about to run, she ran straight into Mon-ho, who had been waiting there for a long time.
잘 지냈어? 아니지? 네가 그런 거 아니지? 그런 게 없잖아 네가, 그지?
나야. 내가 그랬어.
너 대체 누구야? 아! 너 뭐야? 너 뭐야?
나 사람 아니야. 나 쓰레기야. 나는 강선영이 아니야. 나는
하지마. 너 아무 얘기도 하지마.
행복해지고 싶어서 행복해질 줄 알았는데 문우 씨 미안해. 나 좀 가게 해주세요. 저 좀 제발.
너 나 사랑은 했니?
Seeing how firmly Seon-yeon answered him, Mon-ho decided to let her go, and promised that he would never look for her again and would not disturb her life anymore. Then he told Seon-yeon to be careful, because the police were already searching the entire city for her. What Munho still did not know at that moment was that Kim Jong-un had already quietly arrived at the station and had seen the two of them meet. The moment Munho left, Kim Jong-un followed right behind Seon-yeon and moved in to arrest her, but she broke free and escaped. Outside the station, Munho saw a group of police officers approaching from afar, and he immediately realized that something was wrong, thinking they must have come for Seon-yeon, so he hurried back into the station. At this time, with Kim Jong-un chasing after her, Seon-yeon had already fled into the mall next to the station and was standing at the edge of the rooftop, because she had nowhere left to go. As she looked at the trains passing back and forth below, there was not a trace of fear in her, and perhaps only by jumping from here could she finally become her true self again.
선영아! 너 지금 뭐해? 야, 빨리야, 이 새끼!
At the end of the story, Seon-yeon died on the train tracks, bringing her painful and tragic life to an end. She was fortunate to have met someone like Munho, who loved her so deeply, but she was also unfortunate, because she came from a nightmare-like family background. She was not born evil, nor was she cruel by nature. All of her lies and the terrible things she did came from her desperate longing for a normal life. She wanted so badly to escape the suffering of the bottom rung, to escape the relentless pressure of debt collectors, and to have a home and the right to be loved. So she turned herself into someone else, learning to be gentle, learning to be frugal, learning how to love someone with care. Her feelings for Munho were never an act. The dates circled on the calendar for visiting his hometown, the gifts she prepared for meeting his parents, and the late-night calls she almost made but hung up instead. All of those feelings of excitement and unease were real. What is most heartbreaking in this world is not the clear line between good and evil, but having no other choice when cornered by despair. We may never go through Seon-yeon's suffering, but through her story, we can still understand one painful truth. A person cannot truly start over by erasing the past or crossing the line, but only by facing hardship head-on and holding firmly to the bottom line. And that train heading toward hell is also a constant reminder to everyone that once you take the wrong step, there is no way back. Alright, that is the end of today's story, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.